Welcome back. The future of streaming services, according to the latest announcement that Netflix has reached a record amount of subscribers. Well, what does that mean? Joining me this morning is what streaming service consumers need to know is the chairman of media and tech advisory firm CREATV Media, Peter Csathy. Nice to have you here.
Great,
Peter. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
You're a busy guy. You're watching all things media. This is
trying.
The world is crazy when it comes to what's happening in the media.
Yeah.
Netflix just breaking records all over the place.
Absolutely. Netflix reached 137 million now, and that's the good news. The good news is that you and I and everybody who's here, we all watch Netflix, and that's more and more our go-to service. But the bad news for Netflix is that 137 million of us watch it, and it's a question of where they go from here. So in the U.S., you don't see all that much growth anymore. Something like 6 out of 7 new subscribers to Netflix actually come from outside the U.S. So that's it's going to be a challenge for Netflix to continue that kind of hyper growth to keep investors happy.
Well, you know what's interesting is that in television we always had what's the lead in and what's the lead out of a program, a specific program. And there was, and I remember the Thursday nights on ABC when Happy Days was on, Laverne and Shirley, and all those shows tied together and kept the viewer engaged until news time. These new services don't really do that. They're kind of one-off, and then you go, all right, what else am I going to do now? Oh, I'll go to Prime. So what's going on there?
No, that's exactly right. So what Netflix has done so far is just flood the market. They've spent $13 billion on content this year. Think about that, $13 billion. Nobody's come close to that. So Amazon Prime Video tries to keep up with $4 to $5 billion, which is insane amounts of money. But you're exactly right. There isn't really that much like continuity to it all, and so many of the critics feel that Netflix is just throwing it all out there. And then, from a consumer standpoint, how do we find it? How do we find it intelligently? And then there's the big vulnerability that I see for 2019, but which is a great opportunity for consumers, is that Disney's coming out with their own service, and so is Warner Media. And Warner Media used to be Time Warner, but then they were acquired by AT&T this past year. That deal closed, and so now Warner Media is coming up with their own new streaming service to try to be a Netflix killer. So when you look at what's going on here, Disney has announced that they're going to withhold some of their best content for like Star Wars, Pixar movies, Marvel comic movies. Think about that. They're going to withhold those movies from Netflix, and then Warner Media is going to withhold Friends, DC Comics. But let's go back to Friends. Friends is one of the most popular shows on Netflix. And so when you start holding back that content and taking it out of the Netflix, the pool of content that's available to you and me for watching, then it becomes a little bit less of a compelling
So I would argue against that by saying, well, that's why we're spending so much money on original content. We want to create our own Friends. We want to create our own Star Wars, our own that sort of thing. And that's what Netflix is really aiming at. But how do they get their money back?
Well, it's this hyper growth that we were talking about. The only way that they get their money back is if they can continue that kind of accelerated growth plan. And that's going to be challenging because the U.S. market is pretty saturated right now. And something else you mentioned, which is consumers can, if they don't like something or they don't see any of their shows on Netflix this month, they can then just move and they don't have to call a cable guy anymore. They can just leave that service, go to Amazon Prime Video, sign up for Hulu, and then they can watch what they want and back and forth.
Well, that's what I do. I mean, I just go from little box to little box and find something that I want to watch, and I go to that and watch The Crown here, or watch Narcos over there, watch whatever I want to watch wherever I. But what that tells me something though, and that is that I'm attracted to certain kinds of content. And AI in this whole world is learning what I like, and so it's offering me things that they think I know I want.
And that's exactly right. So when you look at the services like the Netflix or Hulu's or Amazon, they're collecting data about you all the time. So they are more intelligent in many ways in terms of recommendations. And so when you're a traditional media company, you don't have that kind of information. But still, ultimately, it comes down to who's watching what shows are going to be the most compelling to a mass base of consumers. And so if somebody sees something on the new the Pixar movies or the new Star Wars movies are only available on a Disney Channel, then they may think twice when they're shelling out their money about signing up for Netflix this month. One surprising fact, something like 50% or 60% of viewing on Netflix is family, kid-friendly programming. because kids love watching things over and over again.
Yeah.
So,
and I think the movie industry has learned that, because a lot of the most successful films lately that are out in theaters, not on any of these services, are family-related films. So that's what's that. All right. So the future of news is, when I look at all this stuff, live television still hasn't impacted this. It's still not there. What's going on there?
Well, live television is now built into, like Hulu has Hulu Live. YouTube has YouTube TV now, and YouTube TV is kind of like a Netflix, but Netflix doesn't have any live. Hulu does, YouTube does. And so what you're seeing is that the local stations, as an example, are absolutely critical still when you're bringing in your new services. Netflix is interesting because they haven't gone that route, which is, in my view, another vulnerability for that versus something like a Hulu Live. One more thing about Hulu. Let's not forget that Disney now owns Hulu. Yeah. 70% of Hulu. So that's as of this past year.
It's Peter Chernin playing puppet master behind the scenes of all this stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of puppet mastering going on.
Peter Csathy, thanks so much for being here. Very interesting stuff. We look forward to hearing more from you. And you can catch him on LinkedIn. He's got some great articles there. It's terrific. And also your book is called?
It's called Media 2.0, and this year it's the 2019 version, of course.
It's a great book. Thanks very much for being here. All right.